This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, commissioners, when you call your name, please indicate that you are here by saying here. Chairman Hart,
Here.
Vice Chair Stevens,
Here.
Commissioner Knight,
Here.
Commissioner Rudd,
Here.
Commissioner Tellez,
Here.
and Commissioner Willingham. Mr. Chair, Commissioner Willingham had a family emergency he had to take care of. He said he might be late. Other than that, quorum is present.
Thank you, David. Will you please join me at this time in rendering a pledge of allegiance to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America
and to the
to the republic
for which it
which stands
one nation,
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time, we'll have introduction of commissioners and advisors. Commissioners first. Vice Chair Stevens.
Yes, good afternoon. Just wanted to say hello to everyone. Live in Tampa, Florida. I've been on the commission for about 3 years now, and been in the transportation industry my whole career. And I have a 21-year-old son with cerebral palsy. So that was my initial interest in the commission and be my motivation.
I think whoever, another commissioner speaking, if you're speaking, it's muted.
This is Renee Knight, Commissioner Knight. I'm Vice President of Community Services for Elder Source. I've been on the commission for about 18 months. I'm from the Jacksonville area. I have over 26 years experience working with seniors and senior programs. And have a vested interest in caring for seniors, and transportation is a critical need. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I cannot hear you if you're speaking. You're muted.
Okay, Commissioner Rudd.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Christine Rudd. I actually just moved to Titusville in the last couple of months, but I've lived in Orlando for over 20 years. Commissioner Stevens was saying I have cerebral palsy, and so not being able to drive transportation is a very important issue. And I've been on the commission for about 1.5 years.
Commissioner Tellez.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robin Tellez, and actually I'm a registered nurse living in Miami-Dade County. And I work as an HR director at Baptist Health South Florida. I've been on the commission for 3+ years. And my interest is through one of our programs that has the goal of hiring more people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. And my name is Marion Hart. I retired from the Florida Department of Transportation at 30+ wonderful years. And I've been on the commission for 9 years, half of those years as chairman. Okay, at this point, I want to go over a few of our meeting rules. This is a public meeting and operates on the Florida Government and the Sunshine Act. This meeting is being recorded, and all verbal, written, and text, i.e. chat box feedback, will be logged within the meeting minutes. We advise commissioners who are on the webinar to not communicate privately. These chat box are with board members in order to ensure that the discussion remain in the sunshine. The public meeting comment segment will follow the same format as the in-person meeting. The first public comment segment is intended for agenda items only. However, we welcome public comments on any topics during the second comment segment. We've asked participants intending to speak to submit a public comment form prior to the meeting. We will first call on the participants who submitted forms. We will then call on other webinar participants interested in speaking, indicated in the chat box, and we will follow that by participation on phone line. All speakers must identify their names, their organizations, and the county represented. And the speak time frame is 5 minutes for public comments. We will now turn it over to Debbie Hall to give us a tutorial on the GoToMeeting webinar.
Hi, this is Debbie Hall. I don't see my slide. David. Hi, on the screen, you'll see that there are 4 buttons at the bottom of your screen, and one is the microphone that will be red when you turn it off. It will be green when you turn it on. You also see a camera button, a screen button, and a leave button, so you can leave the meeting. The camera button, we ask that you, if you're not speaking, that you leave your camera off. It will also help your networking ability. The screen share button is for people who are going to be presenting, and they can call up like a presentation, like what David is doing now. And you can hit the leave button to leave this meeting. At the top of your screen, of the meeting screen, there's a toggle button where you can view who's talking. If you want to see everyone, you can click on the everyone toggle. If you want to see just the speaker, you can see just who's talking. There's several options that you can choose. And over to the right, you can click on the people icon and see all of the people who have joined the meeting. The chat icon will allow you to send a note to our person who is monitoring the chat. And the settings icon will allow you to control your video, your audio, and several other things that you might need to work on for this meeting. Anybody got any questions, be sure to ship them off to chat and we'll try to answer them for you. Thank you.
Okay, now we enter our public comments section. We will now call on speakers who submitted public forms to David prior to the meeting. As mentioned, we will only accept comments pertaining to the agenda items during this segment. And we will notify speakers when they're 1 minute from reaching the 5-minute limit. The information I have is we received a form from Lisa Picot, the president of the Florida Public Transportation Association.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Lisa Picot. I'm the executive director of the Florida Public Transportation Association. I am here to speak about the ADA-TD policy issue that is on your agenda today that the CTD staff and commissioners have held workshops over the last few months. So first, I did want to thank the staff and commissioners for having those workshops and allowing us to provide our input. But we do continue to have questions about the validity of this informal policy and disagree with many of the assertions that are being made in this report. Unfortunately, we feel that the answers given in the report just don't seem to jive with how transportation services are actually supposed to work at the local level. The two agencies that oversee billions in transportation dollars and set policy and guidance for these dollars, both at the state and national level, have concerns with this policy and the way it's being administered. The Federal Transit Administration agrees with our position, FPTA's position, that ADA services should not be considered a sponsored program, and it should not be used to deny services to other transportation programs. The Florida Department of Transportation also has concerns with this policy and has made that clear to CTD staff. I want the commissioners really to think about what you're doing if you approve this and what it means. It means you're potentially going against what FTA is recommending and ignoring FDOT's concerns. That's something I honestly would have never thought this commission would agree with and would move forward with. We continue to question numerous areas of this policy, such as the fact that it was unwritten from the beginning. It was only given to certain CTCs, not all CTCs in urban areas, and it was done through quality assurance reviews. Again, nothing was ever formally put out, and it's been applied unequally through the state. It's also ignoring other funding sources that happen in different parts of each county. This is called trip shedding or trip dumping, and this happened in the early 90s once the ADA passed. The Medicaid agency tried to do the same thing. They told their folks, hey, great, we have this whole ADA complimentary paratransit services, and anyone that's disabled should take that first because Medicaid's the payer of last resort. Well, people got involved at the federal level and they told Medicaid they could not do that. ADA is not sponsored. There is funding comes from the local governments. It's an unfunded mandate. And they were told to stop, and they did stop. So there's just so much wrong with this policy and the assumptions in this report. It's really difficult for me to understand how you can keep moving forward. We're disappointed as an industry that you refuse to alter your position to come into compliance with the guidelines and recommendations provided by the Federal Transit Administration. Do want to point out one more time, this is trip dumping. It goes against policies set forth by the agency that oversee these rules and regulations related to ADA at the federal level. You are now going to sanction this. What this means, if you sanction this, is that other state agencies can do the exact same thing to the TD program. Medicaid brokers can now say, hey, great, everyone should take TD, ADA first, then TD, and when those TD dollars run out, then you take Medicaid. Medicaid by federal law is the funder of last resort. So this is setting precedent if you approve this policy. We feel the documentation that FTA provided to FPTA and that we provided to you means that they support our position and you are violating their guidelines. In my opinion, it's as simple as that. I really hope the commission takes the correct action and rescinds this policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. David, are there any more forms that we need to address at this point?
No, Mr. Chairman, we have not received any other public comment cards at this time. We can invite those others to speak on the webinar or the phone.
Okay, we will now invite webinar participants to indicate in the chat box if they wish to speak. We will unmute you and call your name. If you are experiencing technical difficulty with video, please submit your comments in the chat box and we will read it out loud. Is there anything in the chat box? Okay. Finally, we go to participants on the phone that are interested in speaking. You may press *2 to unmute your line. Please announce your name, your organization represented, county of residence. After providing your comments, please press *2 again to mute your line. Do we have anyone on the phone? Okay. Hearing none, I guess that ends our public comment section. Next, we'll enter into our action items. First on the schedule is approval of the March 30, 2021 meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
Commissioner Tellez, I approve.
Yeah.
Stevens, I'll second.
Okay. Are there any questions or discussions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By your vote, minutes have been approved. Next on the agenda, we have the community transportation designations. And we have presenters from the planning agencies. First, Brevard, we have Sarah Quorum. Brevard,
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me?
yes.
Excellent. All right. My name is Sarah Crom. I'm the Senior Transportation Planner with the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization. On May 4th, the Board of Brevard County Commissioners formalized a letter expressing their desire to continue as the Community Transportation Coordinator in Brevard County. On May 13th, the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization Governing Board adopted Resolution 21-19 as included in your agenda package, recommending that the Board of County Commissioners for Brevard County continue as the Community Transportation Coordinator. We then finally took both these recommendations to the Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board on May 24th, and they recommended that the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners continue to serve as the Community Transportation Coordinator, as well as approved the Memorandum of Agreement between the Florida Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged and the Board of County Commissioners. The Space Coast TPO would like to request that the Florida Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged please approve our recommendation and designate the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners as the Community Transportation Coordinator for Brevard County from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2026. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, you have received and reviewed the material. Are there any questions, Ms. Quorum? If not, is there a motion to approve? Motion to approve.
This is Commissioner Knight. I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Rudd. I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By your vote, Brevard has been approved. Next, we have Quentin Eastberg with the Appalachia Regional Planning Council. He has 2 counties, but we will act on them individually. Are you on the line, Mr. Eastberg?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon, commission members and everyone on the call. Again, I'm Quentin Eastberg. I'm the transportation planner here at the Appalachia Regional Planning Council. The first county we have up for your review is Calhoun County. Back in March, we began a procurement process through an RFQ process. We received 1 qualified response, and after getting approval through the CTD to move forward with evaluating that single loan applicant, we did determine that that entity was deemed eligible. They are the current CTC for Calhoun County. That is Calhoun County Senior Citizens doing business as Calhoun County Transit. They've been in this position, over 30 years, and it is staff's recommendation to move forward. At the May 20th ARPC board meeting, the resolution was drafted citing staff's recommendation for Calhoun County Transit to continue to serve as the CTC in Calhoun County from July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2026. And that's the recommendation brought before the board this afternoon.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Eastberg? Voting on Calhoun County. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Your vote, Calhoun County has been approved. Mr. Eastberg, you can proceed with Wakulla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The second county I have for your review today is Wakulla County. Similarly, we began our procurement process back in the beginning of March through an RFQ process. We did receive 2 applicants to that request for interest and qualifications. So then we turned around and did a kind of a full RFP process, selection committee involved and all of the above. Through that process, we did come out with Wakulla County Senior Citizens Council or Wakulla County Transit. Came out as the recommendation from that process as well. Again, at the May 20th, 2021 ARPC board meeting, the resolution was passed recommending staff's approval of Wakulla County Senior Citizens to continue as the CTC that is the current provider for Wakulla County. And then that was approved again back on May 20th and is brought before the board for your review today as well.
Okay, any questions pertaining to Wakulla County? Is there a motion to approve Wakulla?
This is Phil Stevens. I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Knight seconds.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Opposed? By your vote, Wakulla County has been approved.
Thank you, commissioners.
You're welcome. Next, we have Duval County. Elizabeth De Jesus, the North
Yes.
Florida Transportation Planning Organization.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth De Jesus. I am staff to the North Florida TPO, and we are the designated official planning agency for Duval County. We are requesting the commission to redesignate the Jacksonville Transportation Authority as the CTC for Duval County. The JTA has been Duval County's CTC since 2001. Over the last 20 years, JTA have proven to have the qualifications and the experience to do the job. During service challenges, they have remained steadfast in their commitment to provide transportation services to the Duval County community. And with that, I would like to ask you to approve the Jacksonville Transportation Authority as Duval County's CTC.
Any questions of Ms. De Jesus? Is there a motion to approve?
This is Commissioner Tellez. I move to approve.
Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Rudd. I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By your vote, Duval has been approved.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Next, we have Hillsborough. Joshua Barber, Hillsborough County MPO. Are you on, Josh? Joshua, I'm sorry. He's not. Is there anyone on representing Hillsborough County? Okay, for now, we'll table that request. We'll move to Lee County. Brian Raimondo.
Hi, it's Don Scott with the Lee County MPO. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So at the May MPO board meeting, the board recommended that Lee County BOCC, Lee County Transit be designated the CTC, consistent with the LCB's recommendation earlier in the month. Lee Tran has been the CTC over the last year, and they have shown they can perform the services in a safe and efficient manner. And since they are a governmental agency, we did not have to go competitively procure their services. We are seeking the commission's approval of this for the next 5 years, starting on July 1st, 2021.
Okay, are there any questions of Mr. Raimondo? Can I get a motion on approval?
This is Commissioner Rudd. I'll make the motion to approve Lee County.
A motion to second.
Commissioner Knight.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? By your vote, Lee has been approved.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next, we have Pasco County. Tania Gomez.
Hi, I'm Tania Gorman, Pasco County Principal Transportation Planner for the Pasco County MPO. I'm here to ask for the redesignation of the Board of County Commissioners, Pasco County Public Transportation PCPT. On April 18th, 2021, the MPO provided a recommendation and a resolution for the PCPT to continue to have the redesignation to be the CTC for Pasco County. And on March 9th, 2021, Resolution 21-127 was approved by the Board of County Commissioners. And the Pasco County MPO had a letter go forth also on April 8th, 2021, recommending Pasco County a PCPT as the CTC. At this time, we are requesting the CTD to move forward in our motion for the PCPT to continue being the CTC provider for Pasco County from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2026.
Are there any questions of Ms. Gorman? Is there a motion to approve Pasco?
This is Commissioner Tellez. I make a motion to approve.
Is there a motion for a second?
This is Commissioner Rudd, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed by your vote, Pasco has been approved. And we have Taylor County, Jamie Evans.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Jamie Evans. I'm the planning grant manager for Taylor County and represent the Board of County Commissioners. Taylor County issued an RFP on April 15th, 2021 for CTC services. A public meeting was held on April 27th for any questions on the RFP. The county received one response from Big Bend Transit Incorporated. A bid committee reviewed the proposal, and based on the evaluation of the proposal and past experience and evaluations of DBT, because they are our current CTC, the bid committee determined that they were qualified to continue serving as the CTC. This recommendation was forwarded to the local coordinating board, and a memorandum of agreement with DBT was approved by roll call vote at the quarterly meeting. The recommendation from the bid committee and the LCB was sent to the Board of County Commissioners, and they signed a resolution to have DBT continue serving as the CTC from 7/1/21 to 6/30/26.
Okay, that's it. Are there any questions of Ms. Evans? Is there a motion to approve Taylor?
This is Commissioner Rudd. I'll make the motion to approve Taylor.
Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Tellez. I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed by your vote, Taylor has been approved.
Thank you.
At this time, we do have someone on from Hillsborough, so we're going to go back to Hillsborough. Do we have Mr. Joshua Barber?
Hello, Commissioners. This is Joshua Barber with the Hillsborough TPO. I apologize for being late. I thought this meeting was at 1:30. So the Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners has their designation as the Hillsborough County CTC expires June 30th, 2021. They have been the Hillsborough County CTC since 1990 for approximately 30 years. They have expressed their desire to continue to be the CTC for the next 5-year period, which was documented in a letter from the county administrator provided in the packet. And as a government entity, they are not required to go through a formal procurement process. Based on the evaluations, the CTC evaluations over the past 5 years, the Hillsborough County BOCC and Sunshine Line as their operator have demonstrated their ability to provide safe and quality comprehensive services. The Hillsborough County Transportation Disadvantage Coordinating Board has recommended the redesignation of Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners as the CTC, and the Hillsborough County TPO has approved and forwarded this recommendation on to the commission. We have determined that the Hillsborough TPO has determined that it is in the best interest of the transportation disadvantaged citizens of Hillsborough County for the Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners to continue to be the CTC for the next 5 years with the Sunshine Line as the operator. And I would like to ask you all to approve this designation. Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Barber? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve Hillsborough?
This is Phil Stevens. I'll move.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Knight seconds.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed by your vote. Hillsborough has been approved. Okay, that completes item number 6. Now we move to item number 7, the 2021-22 Innovative Service Development Grant recommendations. We'll be hearing from Commissioner Renee Knight.
Thank you. So some background on the Innovative Service Development Grants. The 2019 legislature created the Multi-Use Corridors of Regional Economic Significance, MCORS program, which included $10 million in reoccurring funding to the Transportation Disadvantage Fund, Trust Fund. The funding was intended to award competitive grants to community transportation coordinators, CTCs, and transportation network companies, TNCs, to support innovative projects that accomplish one of the following: increase an individual's access to job training, employment, healthcare, and other life-sustaining services. 2, enhance regional cross-county connectivity. Number 3, reduce the difficulty for an individual to connect to a transportation hub or a hub of their destination. The Commission administers this funding through the Innovative Service Development, or ISD, grant program. Last year, the Commission awarded a total of $5.2 million for 18 grant projects under the ISD grant program. For a status of the MCORS program, this year, the Florida legislature passed Senate Bill 100, which repeals the MCORS program, including the funding for the Commission's ISD grant program. To date, the bill has not yet been presented to the governor. However, if he approves Senate Bill 100, the Commission will not be awarded the ISD grant funding for projects in fiscal year 21-22. The governor has until June 30th, 2021 to take action on this legislation. As we do not know what the final outcome would be regarding the MCORS program, the Commission facilitated its application process for the ISD grant for the upcoming fiscal year. The recommendations being presented today are contingent upon the availability of funding. As a summary of our 21-22 application and review process, this year the Commission contracted with USF, the Center of Urban Transportation Research, Qatar, to provide technical assistance in facilitating the application and review process. Qatar assisted the CTD staff in developing the application packets and providing a training webinar for grant applicants to learn about the expectations of the program. The Commission announced the application process for fiscal year 21-22 grant cycle on March 9th, with a deadline to submit applications on May 3rd. We received 16 applications requesting approximately $7.2 million in total grant funds from the state's 90% match. 15 applications proposed similar or expanded projects that were approved by the Commission in the current year, fiscal year 2021. 13 applications were submitted by CTCs and 3 applications were submitted by the TNCs. 3 applications requested funding on a multi-year basis. 7 applications were submitted prior to the application deadline, where the CTD and Cutter were able to provide feedback and applicants were able to make revisions to their proposals. In addition to these applications, Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority, PSTA, has the 1-year multi-year project, the Direct Connect, which was approved by the fiscal year 2021. The review subcommittee met on May 17th via webinar and included state agency representatives from FDOT, Elder Affairs, and APD. The subcommittee used a scoring rubric to evaluate each proposal. The rubric will provide feedback to the grant applicants for future consideration when submitting similar grants. The subcommittee recommends funding all 16 projects and PSTA's Direct Connect project for second year, totaling $7.4 million, contingent on the availability of funding. However, the subcommittee recommends only approving the application by JTA and PSTA, the late shift, on a 1-year basis. And I'll turn it over to David for an update.
David?
Thank you, Commissioner Knight, for the introduction. I just will real quickly clarify, just like what Commissioner Knight had said, that we do not at this time have the final outcome on the repeal bills regarding the MCORS program. So, commissioners, for the action item being presented here today for you all, you're really being presented with a recommendation for approving the concept of these projects, but the funding will not be determined until that action is taken on that legislation. So in addition to that, I do want to thank particularly the team from Cutter that assisted us this year with this process. We did gain some great insights. So if this funding does go away for this year, we still have some lessons learned, and if there's a potential for a future funding opportunity for this grant, we hope that the final outcome of what Cutter has done will help shed some more insights into this program and into these grants. As you know, many of you have been following this since the beginning. This has been a relatively new program for us to administer, and we've had to each year kind of learn how to build this process, and I think this year has been our strongest. So I do want to thank everybody who's been involved in this, from Cutter's team to assist us with it, to the subcommittee members and their engagement in this process. They participated on monthly meetings since the beginning of the calendar year. And then, of course, thanks to everybody who's applied. I can definitely say that I could see in the writing skills much more improvement upon the applications based on some of this technical assistance. So overall, it's been, I think, a very positive experience despite the uncertainty of where the funding will be. I think that we have a lot of lessons learned for the future of this program.
Okay, David, the funds that have been identified, they'll either be approved in total or they'll be denied in total, right?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I didn't quite follow the question. Oh, you're asking basically if the funding's repealed, none of the projects would be able to receive funding this upcoming year.
Okay, and any approval granted by the commission today is based on the condition that in order for anything to happen with this, the funds would have to be approved. But if not, then it's a moot point. That's what we're saying.
Right. So the vote that are being presented to y'all today is approval of the projects that the subcommittee has recommended, contingent on the funding if the MCORS program were to stay beginning next fiscal year.
Okay, very clear. Is there a motion to approve the committee's recommendation?
This is Commissioner Rudd. I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Knight seconds.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed by your vote. The Innovative Service Development Grant recommendations have been approved. Okay, next we have the 2021-22 Shirley Conroy Rural Area Capital Assistance Grant recommendations. And we going to hear from Commissioner Rudd.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you, Chairman. The Florida Department of Transportation transferred $1.4 million to the Transportation Disadvantaged Trust Fund to provide financial assistance for the purchase of capital equipment focusing on rural areas. The funding is used to award competitive grants to community transportation coordinators or CTCs who demonstrate the need for the capital, the ability to complete the project, and the ability to meet the match requirement. A summary of eligible capital equipment for this grant includes vehicle technology, including communication equipment and other safety equipment. These funds cannot be used for the acquisition, construction, or improvement of facilities. As with all commission grant funds, this grant is for the state fiscal year July 1 through June 30. All equipment purchased with these funds must be received by June 30. A summary of the 21-22 applications and review process. The Commission announced the application process for the fiscal year 21-22 grant cycle on March 4th with the deadline of April 9th to submit applications. 12 applications were received, requesting approximately $1.3 million in total grant funds from the state, which would be a 90% match. 10 applications requested vehicles, 9 replacement, and 1 was in addition to the fleet. 1 application requested technology or software, and 1 application requested maintenance shop equipment. The review subcommittee met on April 29th via webinar and included agency advisors from ACDOT, Department of Children and Families, and APD. The subcommittee reviewed each request and finalized recommendations. 10 projects are recommended for approval. Some additional thoughts and comments would be as follows. Flagler County submitted an application for an interactive bus driver training simulator. Although the subcommittee thought it was a good project, we were uncertain that this was the right funding stream for this type of equipment. For future applications of this type, we would like more information that would demonstrate its cost effectiveness and whether such technology could be utilized by other neighboring CTCs. And lastly, I'd like to thank the subcommittee members who took the time to participate in the process.
Okay, any questions of Commissioner Rudd? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the committee's recommendations?
This is Commissioner Tellez. I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Phil Stevens, all second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed by your vote. The fiscal year 2021-22 Shirley Conroy Rural Area Capital Assistance recommendations have been approved as recommended by the committee. Okay, next we move to item 9, review of the CTD COVID-19 rescue plan. David will provide an overview of the rescue plan that was implemented in response to COVID-19. And Casey Perkins, representing Thomas Howell Ferguson, will provide an overview of how the plan can be adjusted based on the phase down options presented in the meeting packet. David?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be very brief on this because I believe we covered a lot of this at the last commission meeting, but just a quick refresher. This has been an ongoing effort on the phasing down. We started this plan, as you remember, back at the beginning of the pandemic to provide some financial relief to our CTCs who were going to have service level impacts based on the pandemic. Of course, the first few months of the pandemic especially were really the hardest financial hits on the system. And of course, this was before the CARES Act was passed. So we have had this rescue plan in effect since the beginning of the pandemic. Last commission meeting, you all voted to begin the phase down of these financial relief starting in April of 2021. And we were going to do them in a quarterly fashion. So we're now approaching, at the end of this month, a new quarter. And so what we're asking you all to do is to continue the phase down for the next quarter, being July through September. As in the packet, it is stated that our goal, we'd like to present this as to be fully phased out by December 31st. However, we do have one more meeting scheduled for the next quarter, and we can discuss it again to see where things are from there. But for the action item that's being presented today, at least for the next 3 months, July through September, you're being presented with an option to phase down. The two options that are presented, just like at the first commission meeting, there's option one, which is across the board reductions to all the rescue amounts. And option two is addressing the highest percentiles of those reporting the most, or the least on their invoice would be impacted by that option two. You all voted for option two last time, so we would recommend consistently keeping with that, but we did want to present those options again just to show that there's ways you can adjust that. I will now turn it over to Casey to really briefly talk about just an update as far as what is the invoice data telling us, so that you all know where we stand and how we're seeing the service levels since the last time we met in March. So with that, Debbie, you can give Casey the ability, or Casey can share his screen.
All right, looks like my screen's up. So yeah, the way the material is laid out for the rescue plan agenda item in your packets, it's really laid out in an identical way to the last commission meeting. And so my overview will be, practically identical to the last commission meeting as well. If you remember, we started with the screen table here, and this is really just the raw data we look at in terms of getting a sense of the utilization of the rescue plan. So beginning in March, at the very top with Alachua County, they got $3,872.85 in rescue plan funds for that month, when their monthly allocation was $54,235. And we've added some months since the last commission meeting. Having trouble scroll. Oh, I had this. There we go. So we've got it all the way really to April, although April's a little sparse, but February and March really did fill up since the last commission meeting. And what we do at the bottom here is we tally really just every single row for all the service areas we're looking at, all the counties. And so, statewide, in terms of the ones that have reported thus far, for February, the rescue plan funds represented about 14.3% of their monthly allocation amount. That went down in March to the ones reporting 13.2%. And then in April, it's at 3.3%, but I would caveat that, there's still some counties to report. But overall, you're looking at, the months and stuff, and it looks like as the vaccinations picked up, not just in Florida, but nationwide, you are seeing less and less utilization. Now, keep in mind on this first table, because we're tallying them up, you'll have instances where like a Miami-Dade is contributing more to the total or Broward County than say a Liberty County. So on the next page, what we do is we try to say, okay, let's weight every county equally. So whether it's Liberty County or Broward County, we're giving it equal weight. And this is everybody's percentage. So when I say 7.1% for Alachua in the first month of March of 2020, that's just your $3,872.85 divided by the 54.2 thousand. So we look at that across everybody. You can kind of see their individual numbers and whatnot. But giving them all equal weight, we see that it's a similar trend line. It's a similar story, which is, since the start of the, this calendar year, 2021, the utilization has been going down. And so really to end this in terms of options moving forward, we laid out the two options in the same way as the last commission meeting. If you remember, option one, as David explained, was really just cutting equally across the board the rescue plan thresholds in each bracket. Whereas option two, it looks at the outer brackets and it says, let's zero those out sort of one by one. And at the start of this whole rescue plan process, if using the first example where a county really just invoices nothing, they say 100% loss, you know, we're not able to provide anything. They were able to get 47% of their rescue plan amount. With the option you chose in the last commission meeting, we dropped that down to 37%. So 37% is the maximum amount of an allocation that a county can see relative for their rescue funds. And for a county like that, which is the most extreme example, where they invoice nothing, there's really no difference between option one or two. It's going to go to 29% now. Now, for a county that, let's say they're only able to invoice for half their monthly allocation amount, there is a difference. Option one would hit them harder, whereas option two, there would actually be no difference between doing option two and the way it works currently for that particular type of county. And then we've just kind of graphed this out for you at the bottom like we did before. But that's my overview, David. So you can take it back.
I think that is all I have as far as my part as far as the presentation goes of this issue.
Okay.
Are there any questions of David or Casey on this particular matter? Okay, thank you guys for the information. Item 10, CTD policy on American with Disabilities Act, ADA complementary.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. There needs to be this was presented as an action item, so it would be a vote still.
Okay, okay. Wow.
My apologies.
No problem, no problem. Okay, I've asked for questions. All in favor of approving the recommendations, say aye.
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 Opposed by your vote, the recommendation has been approved. Okay, now we go to the CTD policy on ADA complementary paratransit services. Commissioner Tellez will provide an overview on the Commission's public workshops on ADA paratransit services. David and Casey Perkins will provide an overview of the draft report that was published on May 28th. Commissioner Tellez.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Hart. The U.S., let me give you a little background first. The U.S. Americans and Disability Act, ADA, affords individuals with disabilities who live within a community that has a fixed bus route access to public transportation through what is called complementary paratransit services. Transit entities are required to provide these services to eligible individuals to access any destination within 3/4 of a mile of a fixed route. Community transportation coordinators that operate fixed bus route services are required to provide ADA paratransit in addition to the TD services they provide as an CTC. The Commission administers the Transportation Disadvantaged Trust Fund, which is used to purchase transportation services for eligible individuals to access activities that are not otherwise funded or provided by any other agency known as non-sponsored services. Individuals are eligible to receive non-sponsored services if they demonstrate to the CT the following. They are transportation disadvantaged due to age, disability, and income status. They have no other agency or program to purchase their trips, such as Medicaid sponsored trips to medical appointments, and if they have no other means of transportation available, including the ability to access public transit services in their community. The Commission determined ADA complementary transit services are not eligible for reimbursement under the TD trust fund based on non-sponsored eligibility criteria established by the Commission in 1997. Some CTC transit systems have requested the Commission reconsider this position. So in doing that, we conducted public workshops. In response to these requests, Commission conducted a study of the policies governing the TD Trust Fund and to gather feedback from various stakeholders on whether to maintain or revise its current policy related to ADA paratransit services. At the heart of this study is the question whether the cost of ADA complementary paratransit trips should be eligible for reimbursement under the Transportation Disadvantaged Trust Fund. We facilitated a small working group to oversee the research and coordinated the public workshops to gather input from stakeholders. The group consisted of myself, CTD staff, and FDOT Transit Office, and Thomas Howell Ferguson. Beginning in January 2021, we met on a bi-weekly basis and discussed information that was presented in the workshops. The first workshop was held on February 25th and the second on May 7th, 2021. During both workshops, David Don presented an overview of both the TD and ADA programs, as well as provided the rationale to the Commission's original decision for determining ADA paratransit services ineligibility for reimbursement under the TD Trust Fund. We posed questions for members of the public to consider as part of their input on the information presented in the workshops. David also provided an opportunity for stakeholders to provide written feedback that would be included in the final report of the study. On May 28th, CTD staff and Thomas Howell Ferguson published a draft of the final report of this study, and the report includes an overview of the TD and ADA programs requirements, including the impacts on CTCs that are responsible for delivering services under both programs, a summary of the public input received during the public workshops, including all written correspondence provided to David Darm, and recommendations for the Commission to consider moving forward with a policy decision. Today, we are considering a recommendation to approve the content of the report. David will provide a brief overview of the report and answer any questions from commissioners. Specifically, we are recommending the Commission maintain its policy on ADA complementary paratransit services at this time. So now I'd like to give you some reasons, some major reasons for maintaining the policy. First, access to transportation. A major theme of the TD program under Chapter 427 is to address the needs of the recipient. Individuals who are served by ADA paratransit services are guaranteed access to transportation under federal law, regardless of the existence of the state's trust fund. Therefore, TD dollars should only be used to enhance their access where their needs are not being met by the ADA. Second, limitation on funding. Unlike ADA paratransit services, TD non-sponsored services are provided only to the extent funding is available. Commission regulations provide that TD Trust Fund dollars shall not be used to supplant or replace funding of services provided to an individual under any other federal, state, local government program. A reversal of this policy would allow CTCs to supplant a portion of ADA services which are already covered under the fixed route system and reduce the availability of funding for non-sponsored services to other TD or non-ADA riders. Eligibility. Chapter 427 directs the Commission and CTCs to use needs-based criteria to help determine individuals eligible for TD-funded non-sponsored services. These criteria, which were adopted by the Commission in 1997, identify public transit fixed route as a transportation option that must be explored by the CTC prior to determining an individual eligible for non-sponsored services. ADA paratransit services are provided as a complement to the fixed route system. And finally, coordination. Another major theme of the TD program is the coordination of transportation services to the TD population which is defined by Chapter 427 as cost-effective provision of services. The Commission's policy to use TD dollars to only subsidize the fare for fixed route and ADA paratransit services, as opposed to the full cost of those trips, is most cost-effective means of ensuring TD eligible riders have access to public transit. I'll now turn it over to David to provide an overview of the report.
Thank you, Commissioner Tellez. Before I go into an overview, I want to thank you, Commissioner Tellez, for agreeing, voluntold, leading this discussion, leading the workshops, and I've been it's been such an honor to be working with you. You've been engaged from the beginning. You've been engaged and curious about this issue before we even started these workshops, and I could say, I think for both of us, that we've learned a lot about our program through this process. And I want to thank also, of course, everybody who was involved in the working group, the work of FDOT's transit office to be engaged, Thomas Hal Ferguson for their work in terms of designing this report and putting the research together. And then, of course, everybody who's participated in the workshops to be engaged on this discussion. So with that, I'm going to give a quick overview, just as sort of a theme, just to echo what Commissioner Tellez said. I'm going to turn it over to Casey to talk a little bit about the data, and then I'm going to close out with some, particularly focusing on the public comments we received, since that's really, I think, the heart of the report, the meat and the potatoes of the report that everyone needs to know. But kind of to piggyback on what Commissioner Tellez said, you will find as you read through this report that the theme of both in this report and throughout Chapter 427 is about the needs of the recipient. You will see that referenced quite a lot and justifying our decision or the recommendation for a decision for this meeting. And that's really important because the Transportation Disadvantage Program, from its very inception back in 1979, was a recognition that there's multiple different types of transportation out there, whether it's a fixed route or another kind of what we call a purchasing agency like Medicaid, or even for family members in the world I used to come from before I took this role in the vocational rehabilitation world. We call that natural supports, which is a very overly technical term for your own family members, your own friends, people, your coworkers, people who can help you with your transportation needs. But the legislation that created Chapter 427 and everything subsequently that followed recognized that all those options have limitations. And it is our responsibility, especially in terms of the trust fund, to figure out where those gaps are. Where are those needs not being met? Whether it's the fixed routes limitations of meeting those needs, or the sponsoring program, if we want to call it that, where they may pay for a trip to a specific activity like medical appointment, but not a trip to a social recreational activity. So this program was recognizing that we were, as I've liked to use the analogy, we're the AFLAC of transportation programs. We cover the needs that are not being met by the other insurers, in this case, the other transportation programs. The other theme in this report is talking about the recognition that there is a limitation of funding, as Commissioner Tellez said, and that this is not a civil rights program or an entitlement program in the sense that the transportation disadvantage funding, the services paid for by our trust fund are only available to the extent that funding is available. So there is a recognition that the cost-effective theme, as Commissioner Tellez said, which is very important because if we're cost-effective, we are trying to serve as many needs as we can. So it's very imperative that when it comes to identifying what trips, and we are talking about trips here, being eligible for reimbursement, that those trips are truly meeting the needs where they're not being met in other areas. So that's a real important theme in terms of the high level. Commissioner Tellez mentioned eligibility criteria, and then I'll turn it over to Casey. Just to get everyone up to speed, that eligibility criteria that was referenced That was specifically required by Chapter 427. It's specified in the trust fund, the statute that governs the trust fund, which is 427.0159, specifically states that the funding is based on the needs of the recipient, like I said, and eligible and criteria developed by the commission. That eligibility criteria was adopted in 1997. So this has been a criteria since over 20 years. And it specifically identified, obviously you have to be transportation disadvantaged by the statutory definition, meaning you have a disability, your age or your income contribute to a barrier to transportation. But it also identified sort of 3 elements that a CTC needs to sort of screen out or triage when an individual is applying for our program. Number 1, do they have a funding source? Meaning, do they have an agency like Medicaid that purchases transportation for them? Number 2, do they have another means of transportation? Meaning the family member, a coworker, or other types of transportation within their own network that they can rely upon. And then number 3, and this is rarely where the crux of the discussion of this report lies, is public transit or fixed route. And when we talk about ADA complementary paratransit, that is an extension of the fixed route. And that criteria specifically stated that fixed route was not eligible for reimbursement in the sense of a full cost of a trip. However, we do subsidize the fare for those fixed route services because it's an access issue. And we'll get more into that in a minute to talk about the access piece to this. But those 3 criteria were specifically identified in 1997 and is an extension to this issue regarding ADA. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Casey to talk about the data, and then I will get back into the public comments here in a second.
Thank you, David. And I'll be brief, but yeah, so in the public workshops as well as the report, there's a lot of overview with the history of different programs and the state and federal statutes and regulations. What I'm going to be talking about that was uncovered really is just some of the quantitative data in terms of these types of trips and how they're supported financially, what their costs are. And the main source of data that was used for that was the National Transit Database. And this is just a federal database where transit systems across the country annually report financial data, their expenses and their costs. They report trip data, and there's also some inventory data, although we really didn't get into that much. But really what this highlighted or demonstrated when we dove into this data is that the ADA complementary paratransit is really sort of part and parcel of the fixed route transit system that's offered. When they report their operational expenses, that's inclusive of operational expenses related to ADA paratransit, complementary paratransit. And when you look at the revenues, they call it funds earned, but it's really just revenues. When you look at the revenues that cover those operational expenses, they come from really just generally 4 different buckets, and those are directly generated revenues. The big thing there is passenger fares. They come from local government, federal government, and state government. And again, there's really just kind of 4 buckets, and at a very high level, those 4 buckets cover the operational expenses, which are inclusive of the ADA complementary paratransit operational expenses. And then just the last thing, the other piece of this that we looked at was the trip data. And the trip data, again, at a high level, but you can really just break it down into 3 simple types of trips. You have, I guess, what you would call your regular trips, happening on the fixed route. You have your ADA complementary paratransit trips, and then you have what they call sponsored trips. And the sponsored trips are really just trips purchased or sponsored by a third party, whether that's a public program or a nonprofit organization, whatever. But an interesting insight that was revealed there is you can't actually count ADA trips and sponsored trips together. It's got to be one or the other, or it could just be a regular trip. But that's the high level overview of the quantitative data we presented. And so back to you, David.
Thank you, Casey. So I'll briefly go through. I'm not going to cover all the comments that were made. This table and the next slide also summarize those comments and of course the report. For those of you who are looking through the report, it's beginning on page 27 through 32, really discusses in depth about the public comments we received during the workshops on this matter. A lot of discussion, number one, a lot of discussion has been focused on the term sponsored, specifically as it relates to our interpretation or definition of the word sponsored when it comes to what is eligible for reimbursement under the trust fund. To be clear, I think this is the part where that has probably the most legitimacy in terms of trying to get clarity on in terms of a policy. We are not saying in this report that ADA complementary paratransit services are sponsored in the sense that they are purchased like a Medicaid program or another purchasing agency purchase trips. We're not saying that here. But we are not saying that that by itself alone makes a trip eligible for reimbursement under the trust fund. Again, I go back to what I said earlier about the eligibility criteria. Fixed route public transit has never been reimbursed in the full cost of trips under our program. Never in our history, to our knowledge, has our funds been used to cover the cost, the full cost of a trip of a fixed route service. So ADA being an extension of that, we are saying that it's viewed in the same way as a fixed route trip. Now, in the context of our funding, what our funding should be used for, and understanding Chapter 427, again, it goes back to the needs of the recipient. The rider's needs may vary from individual case by case. So in some cases, individuals may have access to fixed route. So let's say that an individual, let's forget ADA for a second. Let's talk about just an individual who does have the physical ability to access a fixed route, but cannot purchase the fare, to purchase to actually be able to participate in a fixed bus route trip. Our program does pay for bus passes. We subsidize that fare. Now those bus passes are usually based on a number of days, days that a rider can use those trips. So in that sense, that funding is used for those individual cases to subsidize their fare because it's an access issue. The same applies. We are making for this policy the same consistent approach when it comes to ADA trips. They are guaranteed access to transportation if they're eligible, but if they can't afford the fare, and that could be $2.50, it could be $3, whatever that fare is determined by the locals. If they cannot afford it, and we've discussed this during the workshops, the transit agency is not obligated to provide that trip, meaning they could deny access to transportation for that individual. So our trust fund dollars can be used in those cases to subsidize the fare for the ADA rider. Now, in the case where there is no availability of ADA trips, whether they live in a community that doesn't have a fixed route, or they might live in a community with a fixed route, but they want to access an activity outside of that fixed route, outside of the 3/4 of a mile, then yes, the TD dollars can be used to subsidize the full cost of that trip, or a higher portion of the cost of that trip, I should probably say, is more accurate than the fare itself. In those cases, in terms of meeting the needs of the individual, yes, there's possibly no transportation available. So it's important when we talk about this that the funding is following the needs of the person, and that each of those needs might be different, might be unique, and it's really imparted upon the standards that we set, but also on the CTCs in terms of screening that. You know, we hear in our industry the term mobility management has been thrown around a lot, and that's really the same concept here. It is understanding what is available to the individual and where those needs aren't being met, where in this case our funding could be used to address that. So that's the biggest discussion item, I'd say, for this. In addition to that, there was some discussion about the fiscal impact, and that the argument was made that if we reverse the policy, that the fiscal impact wouldn't be felt because the allocations would remain the same. but we did demonstrate that actually that's not really the case because of the fact that it's a fixed amount. There's only so much funding that is available, and if our funds are going to be paying for trips that basically would otherwise be covered by the ADA, that's reducing the availability of funding for those that are not covered under the ADA, as I mentioned earlier. So for an example, we use this example in the workshops of the case of Hillsborough County. Sunshine Line uses the fare subsidy. They have about, I'd say about, in the year that we looked at, about 20% of their allocations were used to subsidize fare, which freed up about 80% of their allocation to go to non-sponsored trips. So they were actually increasing access to both riders of the ADA, meaning they were paying the fare, they were subsidizing the fare, where in the case of that county, HART, the transit agency, could arguably have denied those trips if that subsidy wasn't available. And then in the case for those in the county who did not qualify for ADA, Sunshine Line would provide the non-sponsored trip. So that is an example where if that policy was reversed, you potentially could be opening up the door for less funding available for those non-ADA riders. To the point about the policy being unequally applied, basically this was a reference to there's other systems that are not necessarily fixed routes that maybe use other federal grant dollars like 5311 or rural areas. The reality is that this policy in the context of ADA paratransit only applies to fixed route systems because the term complementary is actually meaning a complement to the fixed route. So absence a fixed route, there is no ADA complementary paratransit available. So when we're talking about this policy itself, it's only relevant to communities that have fixed route systems. Okay, so in addition, there was some concerns that were raised about our definitions potentially impacting the CTC's ability to draw down their allocation dollars through the trip and equipment grant. So I think part of that is a discussion about some of our CTCs might use TD dollars to match with other sources, other federal sources or other programs. We don't have a problem with the matching, but the point of the funding, the allocation that's been given to CTCs is specifically based on the demand for service for non-sponsored services and based on the CTC's ability to perform, to actually deliver trips. Remember, the allocation that they get, they don't actually get paid until they actually invoice the commission and deliver services. I'm not saying that they don't deliver services at all or they're delivering limited services. They might be doing services under other funding sources, but when it comes to our dollars and our allocations specifically, those are based on their demonstrating that they're providing a non-sponsored service to get reimbursed under the trust fund. Beyond our dollars, when it comes to the coordination of other funding sources like 5311, Chapter 427 is very clear. It says that beyond our trust fund, CTCs can use other transportation disadvantaged funds, meaning 5311, 5310, 5307, and other programs could be able to support the delivery of transportation services. So purchasing of vehicles, maintenance, capital investments. There's nothing in this definition of non-sponsored, which has been around for 30 years, that precludes a CTC from being able to pull from those other sources and use those to be able to deliver beyond what is a trip, a reimbursement for a trip. A few more points just to make there was debate about the rate, going back to the fare and the subsidizing of the fare. Again, the policy that we have as far as reimbursing or only subsidizing the fare of an ADA trip is consistent with the fare subsidies that we offer through bus pass programs. We do not pay for the full cost of a fixed route trip, nor do we pay for the full cost of an ADA trip, but we do allow for subsidizing the fare to ensure access to those trips. And that is a cost-effective way of ensuring that those individuals who are eligible for those services have access. And then finally, there was some recommendations from some of the public comments about using the allowing the locals to really determine that their eligibility guidelines. That's where the funding is based in terms of reimbursement of trips, regardless of where the individual lives. We do, of course, recognize that local, that's the beauty of the Transportation Disadvantage Program. We're centralized when it comes to policy making and decentralized when it comes to implementation. And we have Chapter 427 has allowed locals to set their own eligibility guidelines. However, those guidelines must comply with the original criteria that we talked about at the beginning of this presentation. The commission is the one that ultimately decides the eligibility criteria, and in terms of the funding, we are the ones responsible for administering the trust fund. So 427 is very clear. It's the commission that's held accountable to those dollars. We answer to the state. The legislature is the one that appropriates the funding. So we are the ones responsible for the ultimately the distribution of those funds, not the local coordinating board when it comes to the disbursement of TD trust fund dollars. Real quick, the recommendations for the report, just as Commissioner Tellez says, we are recommending at this time to maintain this policy. And also recommendation 2 really talks about clarifying. We talked about the eligibility criteria. At a later commission meeting, we would like to present some clarity, some revisions to that eligibility criteria to help address that issue as it regards to ADA paratransit. So that we can assist the systems in knowing that that's the expectation. And then third, we're also saying we also like to see the commission look at strategies to assist the CTCs in terms of implementation of this policy. So there could be multiple ways we could look at that, whether it's through our quality assurance process, training, technical assistance, as well as data collection. One last thing I want to say, I want to mention, there was a comment made by Lisa Bacot about particularly a letter that was written by the Florida Department of Transportation, which is included in the draft report. We have had extensive conversations with FDOT, and we do appreciate their partnership from the beginning of this discussion. We keep saying when this recommendation, as far as the policy goes, that it's at this time because we are always open as a commission to look at this issue again, especially if new evidence is presented. It is our understanding that the department's exploring potentially a study to update what we originally commissioned back in the 90s with University of South Florida, Qatar. And so we're very open to be a part of that study to see what evidence could come from that. If there's something we're missing, we're open to looking at that. So this discussion in terms of this issue is going to be a continuum. It is not a one and done kind of deal. However, this report that you're being presented with really is summarizing, understanding the fundamental value of the Transportation Disadvantage Trust Fund, and that ultimately what it comes down to is access, and that we want to ensure that we are being responsible with our state taxpayer dollars and ensuring as much access as possible. But we are also open to exploring new research and new ideas that may come out of that down the road if that is necessary. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the time to present the report. And now Casey and I will answer any questions you may have.
Okay, are there any questions for David and Casey?
Mr. Chairman, this is Phil Stevens. Got a couple of quick questions.
Okay.
Or maybe just, maybe not questions, maybe they're more suggestions. David had mentioned the FDOT potentially doing an update to the study through Qatar, and I would hope that we watch that. I mean, I don't know what the time frame is for that. I think that's would be important to maybe look at. And then also, would the commission partner with FDOT in scoping out that study so that it can answer some questions? Maybe, instead of maybe just hoping it answers it. I guess more of a involved discussion with FDOT in the partnering sense to really get some good data out of the reports. in order to, to answer questions like, how are other states doing this, that sort of thing. And so I just, I think that's a good direction to maybe answer some questions. And I just want to make sure we stay close to that if we can.
I think we will be hopefully totally involved. I haven't seen the scope of what's being proposed, but I think as far as having an open mind and a willingness to be involved, I think the commission is ready to do that. And if we are saying that we have hope associated with the update, eventually it's going to come back to the commission, and just standing on the sideline will probably be about where we are right now if we're not involved. So I would say that the commission would be heavily involved if the department is receptive to that. Are there any other questions? And out of the 3 recommendations, this is the third one that I want to comment on, and it's just general comment about policy. I don't adhere to the notion that just making a policy is sufficient. I feel like policies will never realize everything intended unless we as a commission assist the community transportation coordinators in providing implementation assistance to live out the intended meaning. And of course, I learned all of this through my 30 years with the DOT, how these things work. But I think policy instructions should include the development of procedures, training, technical assistance, quality assurance, collection and analysis of program data, and compiling and reporting of information. And once we put a policy in place, I think we got to look at how do we do all of these other things as well. You can do something from the top, but there's no consistency as to how it's received and processed at the bottom. So we're going to have to be able to see these things from the bottom up as well as from the top down. And I think the processes that we use to develop these things must be inclusive. And I think all of the partners involved, you got to start looking at things as what is within the best interest of our purpose in terms of service client, rather than questioning with concerns about whatever you're looking at. And if you have concerns, you also need to carry with it the obligation to develop the facts to support. And I think the attitude always should be a mutual exchange for the good of the intended results. So I'm just saying, if we do policy, we need to make sure that we emphasize all of these other things as well. Policy should not be developed in isolation. It must be confined to statutory limits. And I think policy should be approved by the commission under all circumstances. Okay, are there any other comments? Okay, if there's no other comments, do I hear a motion to approve the CTD policy on American with Disabilities Act, ADA Complimentary Paratransit Service? Is there a motion to approve?
This is Commissioner Rudd. I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
This is Phil Stevens, I'll second.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay, opposed? Okay, by your vote, the committee recommendation has been approved.
Mr. Chair, just a real quick technical, well, two technical items. One is for this item, for the report, just like we do with our annual performance report every year, it is a draft, and so I'm going to take that vote as you're approving the substance of the recommendation specifically in the report, but we will still need to make some technical revisions. I do appreciate we did get a few items that in terms of just names of organizations and some other grammatical issues that we need to clean up. So the final draft or final version, which our goal is to get it out by the end of the month, end of June, will be a little different in the sense of just cleaned up, but it will substantively be the same. So it would just be just like we do with our annual performance report that we submit on a deadline. So we'll try to keep it pretty much the same with just some cleanup. That just works for everyone understands that piece.
Well, a better example is the submission of the annual report. You have the liberty to do the tweaking and the cleanup as long as it doesn't change the substance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
One other item, I got notified, just to be clear, for the last action item that or the rescue plan that you voted on earlier, you were voting we got asked, our team was asking, to clarify, you did vote for option 2 for that rescue plan. I'd just like to get a clarifying answer from the commissioners if that was the case. That was the recommendation.
Go ahead.
It was the recommendation for the 2 options of phase down. The recommendation was option 2, and my team was just asking that we get clarity that was what in fact you did vote on, was the option 2 recommendation to phase down versus option 1.
Just tell us quickly, what is option 1, what is option 2?
Option 1 was the reductions across all the brackets, and option 2 is reductions on the top 60% brackets.
Okay. Is there a motion for approval on either of the 2 options back to the commissioners?
This is Commissioner Knight. Question to David. We are currently in last meeting approved option 2. Is that correct?
Yes, and that was why we recommended it, was to keep consistent with the last vote. We were just wanting to throw those as options for you again for this meeting, just like we did last, but our recommendation would be option 2 to be consistent with the vote on March 30th.
Okay, if that's the recommendation of a previous committee, I'll put it out there for approval. Is there a motion to approve option 2?
This is Commissioner Knight. I make the motion to approve option 2.
There's a second.
This is Commissioner Rudd. I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, by your vote, option 2 is it?
Thank you.
Okay, that's the last action item. Now we move into informational items. Number 11, Executive Director Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I get into my report, I want to say, for those of you who are thinking of leaving now, I highly recommend you stay, because we have a special announcement at the end of this meeting, and I didn't want to lose that audience, so we'll leave you on suspense. Call this the teaser trailer for this time, but please stay to the end of the meeting, please. With that, I have a really brief overview, just kind of to reiterate kind of some of the discussion that we had on, we're going into June. This is the last month of the state fiscal year. And actually, as of yesterday, the governor did sign the budget, the General Appropriations Act for fiscal year 21-22. which includes the funding for our trip and equipment grant, our Shirley Conroy grant, the planning grant. So all of those have been officially approved now by the governor. So in the meeting packet, for those of you who are able to review it, right behind the executive director report analysis, you will see the allocations. They were called projected allocations, but now they are official allocations for the new fiscal year. So those counties can expect that that is what they're going to get through the trip and equipment grant. And again, remember, this is the first year for the implementation of the new formula. So those allocations are reflecting what was in the new formula. Additionally, just to give you a quick update on the invoice template, we did have a webinar back in April that Thomas Howell Ferguson helped us with to introduce a new invoice template that we'd like to roll out sometime in the next few months. We're still working on revising and putting it together, but we did appreciate everybody who participated. It was a pretty well attended webinar, and we got a lot of great feedback. So we will provide more updates soon on that. Just wanted to let you all know that we're still working on it. It doesn't look like we're going to have it ready to roll out as far as the beginning of the fiscal year yet, but we are moving along with it. So we're looking forward to sharing more information soon on that. I'll wait to get on the Rider Stakeholder Relations Subcommittee here at the end because I wanted to also offer Commissioner Rudd a chance to speak on that as well. ISD grant technical assistance report, just as I talked about, Commissioner Knight and I had mentioned that this year we did contract with the University of South Florida Qatar to assist us with implementing that for this grant cycle. And despite whatever happens with the funding as far as the MCORS program goes, we are expecting to have a final report to the commission. And so hopefully by the next commission meeting, we can discuss that. Martin was not here today, but his team is here. And I just want to say again, thank you to those of you from Qatar who worked so hard on this. This was I thought a very rewarding experience for us as a team to have their partnership. And I think there's going to be a lot of great insights to talk about in the future if there is any interest. If the the funding is repealed, there may be an opportunity down the road to support this grant in the future, where this report may provide some more insights in how to design that down the road. Also, we are actually scheduled to have an in-person conference this year. We're looking really optimistic and looking forward to working with FPTA on a joint conference this year in October. I don't know what's wrong with my calendar months here. In October, at the end of October, we're scheduled, and that would also coincide with a commission meeting that we have scheduled in Daytona. So we'll be getting out more information shortly about the event. As far as the activities, we invite all our commissioners, advisors, and of course stakeholders to be a part of that discussion. It will be the first in-person meeting we've had since the beginning of the pandemic. So, and then lastly, I just talk about, we had mentioned this a few months ago. We are looking to do a new subcommittee, and it's been kind of a goal to do for starting up this summer that Commissioner Rudd will be chairing, to look at ways that we can improve our public outreach and getting information out there about the TD program. We understand that there's a lot of interested stakeholders. We've talked a lot extensively recently with the Centers for Independent Living, the ARC of Florida. We have actually upcoming next week, the Family Cafe has invited me to speak on the Transportation Disadvantage Program. I know Commissioner Rudd will also be there. So we have talked about that. It's really important as we go in, especially when we're getting out of the pandemic. We want to look at ways that we can improve our partnerships and getting more people aware of our program. I think that it's fair to say that the transportation disadvantage program is probably going to be growing significantly over the next decade because of the nature of the population we serve. The state is continually growing and diversifying. And so what that means, there's more needs. And so we want to do more to get our name out there and participate in collaborative initiatives. And it's not just what our funding can do, but what these partnerships and collaborations could do to advance our mission. So I'm really looking forward to diving into this. I think this summer we're really going to look particularly at our website and our online information to get that maybe a facelift and maybe ways that can be more user friendly to say outsider, not audiences that are maybe not as familiar with our program. So I'll turn it to Commissioner Rudd if there's anything she'd like to add. But I appreciate her being very patient with me as the staff to getting this set up. It's been one of those having to get through some other priorities before we could get to this one. But I think this summer we're going to really advance this subcommittee going into the summer.
So good afternoon again, everybody. Hi. I just wanted to kind of piggyback some of the things that David was talking about. I was really excited when he approached me with this idea because adding to what he said, I feel like the riders also need more information. Stakeholders need more information about what we do and who we actually are. I really feel excited about this because it's going to answer a lot of people's questions and give them a better idea of what to do, when to do it, how to do it, whether they have a problem, whether they want to access the system. Like he said, we're going to start in the summer. We'll be at Family Cafe next week. And I just wanted to thank David and John. I know that John Irvin has met with us. I want to thank you for approaching me and allowing me to be the chairperson for this. This is something that since before I got onto the commission, I feel is necessary so that everybody, riders and stakeholders and CTCs, we can all work together more efficiently so that we know what each person's responsibility is.
With that, Mr. Chair, that completes my report.
Hey, thank you, David. Item 12, Commissioner and Advisor Reports. Are there any commissioners who care to report at this time or advisors? Commissioners first. Okay. We'll move to item 13, public comments. This is an opportunity to provide and share information only. Is there anyone wanting to make public comments at this time? Okay. Item 14, Commissioner and Advisors closing comments. And I think for the first time, I'll start it off. I think that this is a great time to be on the commission. I'm real happy with the commissioners that are currently on the commission. Not only are they tremendously qualified, but if you look at the agenda, they're actively involved and they're leading efforts to address issues and they work processes and they make decisions. So it's a good time to be on the commission. But at this time, I want to say to the fellow commissioners, the agency partners, the local coordinating boards, the designated planning agencies, the community transportation coordinators, commission staff, users, and supporters. The Honorable Governor Rick Scott appointed me to the commission on June 6, 2012, for a term extending to August 13, 2015. Subsequently, Governor Scott reappointed me to the commission as chair on March 23, 2016, for a term extending to August 13, 2019. A little over a year ago, I mentioned at a public commission meeting held in the Florida Department of Transportation auditorium that on April 13th of this year, 2021, I would have a decision to make. I have now achieved being affiliated with the Transportation Disadvantage Program, having direct and indirect responsibilities as an employee with Florida Department of Transportation for a little over 30 years, and working as a program manager, a staff director, a district manager, statewide manager, administrator. And as a commissioner and commission chair for approximately 9 years. Now I've reached a decision point. Today I will be submitting a letter of resignation as chairman and a member of the Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged. This has been an enjoyable and worthwhile experience. Any achievements during my tenure belong to all of you. I've always been just a member of a fantastic team. My motto has always been to encourage putting forth a continued effort to make the best better. We can never rest on our laurels. We cannot afford to just be a maintenance organization. The state of Florida is an urban state, a high growth state, whereas populations the commission was created to serve are drastically increasing. The fastest growing population in our great state happens to be centenarians. Therefore, we must use every tool in the toolbox. I encourage my commission colleagues to put forth efforts not only in implementing policy, but the development of supportive procedures, establishment of provisions for appropriate technical assistance, for the development of good quality assurance measures, for the collection and analysis of program data, and for evaluation and reporting purposes. I also encourage my commission colleagues to continue to develop goals that are based on a platform of visionary planning, to continue an embrace of innovative application strategies, to continue an embrace that incorporates measures to maximize growth opportunities, to continue to embrace an emphasis on economic cost-effective measures, to continue development of good quality levels of service for our clients. Finally, I encourage the commission colleagues to continue to look for ways to strengthen our relationship with local government, state agencies, and associations in an effort to find common ground and a unified spirit of mutually helping find solutions, to include the utilization of our private sector when appropriate, and to potentially minimize perceptions or reality of potential conflicts. The Florida legislature has been very favorable toward our program. Therefore, we must evaluate our efforts and always be in a position to make available appropriate information to help justify continued support for future consideration. I apologize for consuming so much time. Thank you very much. And I will always love TD. Thanks again. Are there any other comments before we close?
I just want to say, Mr. Chair, from my role as executive director, it's been such an honor and privilege to have worked with you. I've worked with a few boards over the 10 years or so of my career, and you've always been so wise and calm and level-headed, and we've gone through quite a lot the last 2 years together. And through the entire time, you've been constantly, the voice of reason. And so I'm going to terribly miss you, but as I've told you, and I will tell everyone, you're still going to be getting phone calls from me and our team to get your counsel and wisdom still. So I still hope that still remain in communication with you. We will be terribly missed by all of us here at the CTD team. The commissioners, we've all appreciated your leadership through this, through especially these last few years during the difficult times our programs faced. So with that, we wish you the best in your retirement, and looking forward to seeing you. Not me personally seeing you on the golf course, but others. The golf course.
I do have an appointment for Monday morning. Okay.
Chairman, this is Phil Stevens. I just wanted to chime in and say three things. One, thank you for all your service, and congratulations, secondly, on retirement. And then thirdly, just best wishes. It's this next stage of your life. David, I would like to add an agenda item to our next meeting then. We're going to have to exponentially grow the size of the commission to make up the difference in work effort. So we need to maybe double or triple to cover Marion's contribution here. So just note that down there.
Wow.
I'll have our team work really hard to figure that one, to figure out how we're going to accomplish that.
Well, the commission will be better than ever before. So I appreciate the opportunity, and it was quite an honor. Okay. At this time, I understand.
Can I make that comment?
Yes.
This is Winneba Hart Meyer, Marion's daughter, and his grandkids. Honored to be here during this special moment. And we want to say that we are so proud of you, your leadership. And I get emotional talking about it because I have so much pride for my father and so much respect for all that he has given in this industry, the person that he is, his character. It speaks volumes. It's priceless. So we are so proud of you and we love you.
Thanks. I used to say I couldn't be surprised, but I'm surprised and appreciate it. Okay, I understand staff may feel you're, as they say, you're the man, and you have great capabilities. So for now, keep this going until you work it out the way it need to be. And I understand staff, it probably will ask you about the possibility of changing the next scheduled meeting date, but I'll let them handle that. And if there's no other comments, meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.